Welcome to the Fusion Power Podcast. My name is Jared Gillespie. I'm the CSO and your host today. I'm excited about this episode, and this is going to be very applicable. I think this is going to be a major value add to anybody watching today. If you've been in solar for a long time, we're going to see a lot of changes. Today, we're going to be talking about a special technology that you have to learn if you're going to stay relevant in the game. Today on the program, I have Nathan Skousen. He is one of the nation's foremost experts on solar batteries. We're going to be talking to Nate about all sorts of different things, including the technology, the advancements, how to sell it, why it's important, and of course, what is the value to the customer. So stick around. You don't want to miss this episode. So welcome to the show, you guys. Really excited to have you here. I've got on the program with us Nate Skousen. Nate has been doing, so how long have you been doing solar, Nate?
11 years.
11 years. It's been a while. I've been doing it for 13 years. I've been doing 11 years as well. I started in 2013. If you've been doing solar for several years, one of the things that you'll kind of agree with is not only do we have the solar coaster, it's been a crazy ride over the last decade, but the technology and the way that we sell solar has changed quite a bit. As more and more utility companies get away from one-to-one, meaning net metering, what's happening is now we're going to a lower buyback, and now we're having to change the strategy of the way that we do solar. A lot of markets, including here in Arizona, we have other things like time of use and demand charges. And so selling solar, we've had to adopt the strategy, the way that we set up the system, the demand management, and now we have new capability to do some pretty special things with battery technology. So I'm excited to talk to you, Nate, and get pick your brain about some of the things that reps can look forward to and that customers can look forward to. Let's just start from the very, very basic here. Can you explain the basic function of a home battery storage system and then how they integrate with solar?
Yeah. So to me, when I started solar, I would get the question a lot, like, "Oh, so this has batteries, right?" And I would have to explain net metering. And you'd have to explain, like, look, we're going to produce all your power for the year. However, obviously, half the time the sun's out, half the time it's not. And how do you account for that? Well, we're going to spin your meter backwards, and then you get the credits, and then you spin the meter forward at night, and your credits pay for your usage at night. And yeah, if you use 10,000 and we produce 10,000,
you're net zero.
You're net zero. So explaining the battery to me is easier than explaining a NEM program. So, hey, your battery just goes is like an off-grid cabin. You know, have you ever wondered how those work? People know, yeah, it works with batteries. So during the day, the solar charges your battery. As the sun's going down, you're living off of solar in the battery. And then through the night, that battery's taking you till sunrise again.
And it's a really cool application because it is a whole home product,
Solution.
right? It is a whole home solution now, whereas solar in the past has been kind of a half and half. Net metering kind of allowed it to be, right? But now that the net metering's gone away and we've got these low buybacks, it's not you don't want to overproduce.
People, and it's pitched to them this way: let's break you away from the utility. But the sun's only out half the time, and you're giving them solar panels. You're only giving them half the solution to their problem. Their goal is to break away from the utility. And you're telling them that they're doing that by getting solar, and they're just not. So it's a way to give them a full solution. You don't have to play by their rules. They can change the buyback to whatever you want. You don't care.
They can get rid of the buyback completely.
You don't participate in it. So I am actually giving you what you want, which is breaking away from the grid.
It's awesome. So what are some of the key features of the Powerwall 3? This is the game changer, right? Batteries have been cool. Yeah. We've done a handful of them. But from an adoption standpoint and what it is that's going to be of value to the customer, tell me some of the key features of the Powerwall 3 and how it compares to some of the previous versions or maybe some of the other competitors.
So the biggest things that they changed were the power. So what I'm telling customers is, batteries have obviously been around for a very long time. and especially in areas like Arizona, where you have demand fees. These batteries, you would have to get, 3, 4, 5 of these batteries to be able to eliminate that peak usage, to be able to eliminate usage from 3 air conditioners turning on. And you could do it, but there's also a budget to keep in mind. So what they've done is they came out with it's like 2.5 times the inverter power of the old model. Capacity's never really been an issue. Capacity is relatively cheap. You can get a lot of kilowatt hours for not very much money. The issue is how you manage that power and how much power it can give at any given moment. So once they change that, and then they also change the install, where you don't have to have this huge transfer switch. You don't have to spend a day moving loads over. So they've eliminated, I'd say, $3 to $5,000 off the cost of a battery. And then now I can hit your demand with 1 instead of 2. And the biggest thing was they didn't change the price of the batteries. So you've just gone from having to sell them 2 with another $3 to $5,000 in installation costs to 1.
Right.
Without that installation cost. It makes sense.
It's huge. What would you say, what are the primary benefits of adding a battery system like a Powerwall 3 to a residential solar setup?
From what I see from a homeowner's perspective, it has been split down 50-50. Half of these people are, because I'll ask them, why do you want this? I'm not here to convince you to want anything that I have. I'm here to see what you want. And why do you want it? So we want the solar, we want the battery. Well, why? I'd say about half the people want it for that independence, and they just say, I don't like paying SRP. I don't like it. I don't like them. I don't like that the bill goes up. I don't like that they've been doing these weird things with on peak and off peak, and I don't like them messing with me. So I don't care if this was $100 more a month. I can afford $100 a month. I would pay $300 a month to never pay them a $200 bill again. And I'd say half the other people are doing it for savings, because it will. Even 3-year, 5-year, 10-year, you're looking at it being far better than their other option of solar only. And they're going to make their money back on the system in 10, 12 years, or finance at 0 down, pay off the loan in 10, 12 years with the same amount of money that you were going to send to the utility company anyways.
Sure. How does battery storage improve energy independence and reliability for customers?
So again, that goes back to, a lot of people think that when they get solar, they're becoming energy independent. The battery is what actually makes that happen. So it's giving what they think they're getting from solar only. You're actually giving them that with the battery, because that energy independence means that you're not relying on anything else. So with these systems, I can come in and give somebody a system that I confidently know will run till sunrise again for that solar to start charging it, and they truly are independent, meaning if there was this devastating disaster, something on the grid, and the grid was down for 10 days, they'd be fine. Unless the grid is down because of a 10-day monsoon and your solar's not charging the batteries, and then there's a backup gen for that. You just plug in a gen, turn it on, and charge up your batteries with a little generator.
As long as the sun shines, though, you've got power for your house. What's really cool, though, is kind of going back to the capacity of this new battery. Because of the larger inverter, now we're also able to power more than just essential loads. It used to be, it'd be like, okay, well, if the power goes out, we'll keep your refrigerator and freezer going, which is important. We'll keep your circuit on so you can keep having your internet and maybe some TV and a couple lights. But now you've got the ability with the bigger inverter now that we can actually run your AC.
Yep, and it is a double-edged sword, because now that you can do it, your capacity is at risk.
Sure.
Now, but that's fine, because especially if you're dealing with a customer whose goal is energy independence, that's what they want, and this is the price for what you want, and maybe they won't, maybe it's more of a financial better decision for your battery to drain by the end of peak. And maybe doing this system to get you 100% off grid, this Armageddon style, I am independent. I don't need anybody else. Maybe it's a 15-year ROI or 16. It's still going to pay for itself.
Sure. And we'll talk about that is the cool thing, is saying you are independent of the grid and you can run if the grid were down. But there's also some really cool things that we're doing to take advantage of the current rate plans that are out there, whether you're in California or whether you're in Arizona. The way that the utility rate plans are set up, being able to discharge the battery at specific times,
Right.
and basically replace really expensive on-peak power with a cheaper rate that you charged your battery with earlier in the day, or maybe in off-peak rates at that, the previous night. Well, now I'm taking what I would have spent 26 cents a kilowatt hour and replacing it with 4-cent power.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a major savings during those afternoon. And then I'm also getting rid of the demand charges on top of that, because my battery and my solar combined are now providing me with all that power. I'm not having to subject myself to those risks from
And
the
this
grid.
new inverter is actually a big enough inverter to eliminate huge chunks of demand for just one battery. And yeah, it gets into when you build that value of, there's people, I've met them, I'd be driving around the middle of Northern California all the time, where they've been running on a generator for 5 years, 6 years, off grid. So it's just something, it costs money to have electricity, no matter how you look at it. Now, running off of a generator solely is more expensive than even the grid. But if they build that, why does somebody do that? They see value in having electricity. So a lot of these people, they will pay more to have that independence. And then when you use the savings as like icing on the cake, so they already want it. They would already spend more if it didn't save them a dime. And then you say, oh, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned this, but this battery is going to pay for itself because I'm going to switch you over to a rate plan where you're 5 cents during off peak. So anytime you would actually pull from the grid because the battery drained at like 3 in the morning, you're going to be 5 cents anyways. And now I've just eliminated any demand, any peak, any 12-cent charges, any 20-cent charges, any 35-cent charges. I've eliminated everything above 5 cents.
Sure.
And you can't even buy solar cash for 75% off and get it for 5 cents a kilowatt hour. So it's cheaper than charging your battery with solar.
Yeah.
So once they find out, wait, I can get something I was going to pay more for and it will pay for itself. Not only that, but save me money. It becomes something they want. Not will it save me money? Will it not? Their only expectation is not savings. Their expectation is independence.
Sure.
You're going to give them that unless it's broken or doesn't work, whatever, truck roll, you'll get it fixed. But it's the only way you can guarantee that they are getting their expectation, because you will give them energy independence.
So let's talk about kind of market demand. Where do you see the demand for batteries as we move forward?
In Arizona, in places like Hawaii, California, I mean, in a lot of places, it's just solar and batteries. It's going to be 100% adoption rate. I mean, Hawaii already is. California is pretty much there. Arizona's a little bit different. In the sense that if I get a battery in California, I can't charge it for 5 cents. My cheapest rate to charge that battery is more expensive than the cost of solar. In Arizona, if my customer if their number one goal is savings, they don't care about energy independence. They don't care about anything else besides saving money. Arizona's got a very unique future for batteries, because I can go in, I can say, look, I can give you this battery, I can switch you to a plan where you get to buy your power for 5 cents, which is unheard of. That's cheaper than the guy who owns Q-Cell can get solar for. What is it? It's like APS's costs. So you're gonna go from paying 12 cents, 20 cents, 30, whatever plans there are, averaging 16, 17 cents to now you're gonna pay 5 cents for all of your power. Because what this battery will do is disconnect you from the grid. Let's say their peak hours are 3, whatever they are, 3 to 7. You're not going to be attached to the grid from 3 to 7. You're not going to use any power. So you've gone from paying 16 cents for all your power to paying 5 cents for all your power. So Arizona is unique where that battery can save the money all on its own by charging from the grid. Now, the reason why people get solar for 13, 14 cents and charge it with solar, it's not going to be 5.5 cents forever. Yes, over 15, 16, 20 years, you're going to average way more than 13 cents charging that battery from the grid. So the solar is to protect your investment in that battery. And also for that energy independence. If the grid goes down, you have battery only. What happens if it was only at a 30% charge when the grid went down?
That's all you get.
That's all you get. So if their focus is like, I'm 50-50, 50-50 savings, 50-50 battery, they obviously get both. But I think that because you don't need solar to save money, Arizona's it's going to be different. It's going to be like everyone has solar. Hey, everyone has batteries. What's your solar attachment rate to your batteries? It's going to be flip-flopped on its head.
Well, and I think that we're going to see it more and more too. Like you talked about, the affordability is there, the technology is advanced, so we can give customers exactly what it is that they want. But I think it's going to be a necessity too, because we look at the grid, and for the most part, the grid is fairly antiquated. And now we're hyper driving, the amount of electricity that we're using. Everything is electric now, especially as we get more and more EVs. But I mean, everything in the house is powered by electricity. And so now the utilities are like, how in the world do we support all of this? And a lot of them can't, right?
No, yeah,
PG&E, you have to have a scheduled rolling brownout.
Yeah,
because they can't afford it.
Google outages by state. California I think it's like 4 times higher than the second state, but one of the least for weather events.
Yeah.
It's just because they have to
because
turn off their grid. They don't have enough electricity to go around.
And so solar becomes such an important option. One, it actually does help the utility quite a bit, but especially these batteries, because now the batteries can kick in and power these homes, these buildings, and all this extra added power where the utility wasn't otherwise able to do that. Right. And a lot of them, now you see the utilities giving some pretty good incentives to homeowners.
Yes.
Just to help alleviate the stress that they're trying to compensate for.
California, they're going to let you discharge your battery for like $2.50 a kilowatt hour to the grid. It's insane. That's how much they want people.
They need it.
That's basically how they're giving you a rebate, right? Like, hey, we're not going to give you a $3,000 rebate to install a battery, but we'll let you sell it to us, and we'll pay you like 5 times market price for it.
Yeah.
It's their rebate. Something similar may happen in Arizona.
Well, you think about Arizona, you got so much influx, people moving in, and that demand goes up very, very quickly. There's one of two things they can do. It's either they penalize you, which we already have those kind of rate plans already with the time of use. You have certain hours where they're going to charge you 2, 3, 4 times as much as you'd otherwise pay in the off-peak hours.
Here.
Or they force you to even go worse and do these demand charges, which you can't even anticipate. And now your bill is just astronomically high. And so the utility has no choice. It's either we have to, if we can't keep up with the demand and continue to build out our grid, which is going to cost money anyway, and everybody's prices get jacked up. If we don't do that, which we have to, the only other way that we can try to suppress your usage is just by penalizing you more. So in either scenario, having a battery in Arizona is the smartest thing that a homeowner can do if they're trying to be independent and if they're trying to control their costs and be predictable moving forward. Otherwise, It's just like, who knows what's going to happen?
Absolutely. And that's why, because when I'm explaining to these customers, like, look, you can charge the battery at 15 cents. That's fine. They want to break. They're like, no, I want the solar I want to be more independent. Like, it's still saving. Yeah, whatever. Cut into my savings with the cost of the solar. It's still saving me money. I'm buying the solar with the savings that the battery is giving me so I can become independent with this full system.
Now, when we talk about batteries, there used to be some limitations. We've touched on it. Smaller inverters mean less power output, which means we're not able to necessarily drive the appliances and the things that we want.
Or smaller inverters mean you're not necessarily able to capture all your PV that's being produced because it can only charge at so much. So I've been to appointments with people with batteries. It's like they don't even have batteries because it's not even sized properly. And it's like, great, the battery's doing like a little bit of what you want it to do, but you're overpowering it during the charge and still sending it to the grid. And then it's not enough to discharge during peak hours, so you're still pulling, and that's what this 2.5 times bigger inverter solves a lot of that.
Yeah. On the flip side of that is make sure we still, if the promise is, or if the pitch is, you're going to be able to be energy independent if the grid goes down, you do need to have enough solar to get that inverter
Yes,
actually going, right?
Absolutely.
I've seen, some of the jobs that have come through that we've had to kick back to the reps and kind of clarify with training is like, you have to have a big enough system that's going to produce the voltage that will activate that battery.
And customers understand that. And then, it's about talking to the customer. And it's like, hey, do you want a big enough system to be able to charge you if the power goes out in the summer? Or do you want a big enough system to charge you no matter when it goes out? Because then you're going to need a little bit bigger, because what happens if it goes out in the winter when you're producing, 30-40% less at any given moment? And people will, I want the battery that I can be independent, because you're flipping it on its head from like, oh, you might see some savings, you might not, but if you do your laundry at the wrong time, it will cost you your last 3 years of to things that they want and things that make the whole thing more valuable. So do you want solar with this battery? So like, let's say the grid goes down now. You'd be fine now, but maybe not if it went down in January. No, I want the one. And half people say, no, summer's fine. If it goes down in the winter, I'll be okay. And half the people are like, no, I want. So you got to give them options and get them excited about it.
Now, what about for the customers? Because we've in the past, we've almost talked people out of batteries. We've said, oh, it's too expensive. It's not going to be able to do what you want it to do. But now it's like the capacity's there. It's like you need a battery. But we're going to be facing customers who say, well, I'll wait until it gets more advanced. That capacity's bigger. That pricing comes down or whatever. What's your response to a customer who wants to wait and see what happens with the technology?
Right. So, just like it's kind of the same thing. Like, oh, I'm going to wait till the technology of solar gets better. It's like, I can produce 300% of your usage with this roof. What are you waiting for? Like, it's already there. So if that battery can already produce their demand at any given moment, it can already pull them through peak, and maybe multiple batteries can pull them through sunrise. Well, what are you waiting to change? Like, this battery can pull you through. Like, I can do a system that can get you through like 2-3 days of no sun. So what are you and they're not able to really give me an answer.
Well, what if prices come down though? I want to wait till prices get cheaper.
So battery prices have come way down. So I won't disagree with that, and they will continue to go down. That's the price of the battery. This is like 80% computer, 20% battery. Transfer, conduit. I mean, you got so much other stuff than the battery. All the other stuff in this battery are stuff that they find to make it add features, to make it better. Oh, now it can discharge now. Oh, now it will only charge your EV when the sun's out. So so they keep adding software and they keep adding things to make it more valuable, which makes it more expensive.
Sure.
And then on top of that, all the other parts of the battery is the permit, the labor, the copper, the wire, the conduit. Will labor be cheaper 5 years from now than it is today?
Not.
Well, so out of the whole, and you're also not buying a battery. You're buying a battery install with a workmanship warranty. So you're buying a battery, a manufacturer's warranty, an installer's warranty. Mm-hmm. So yes, the price of lithium batteries are going down. The price of lithium batteries accounts for about 15% of the cost of a battery install. So if 80 to 85% of the costs are going up every year, and 10%, even if batteries got cut in half, the battery install is still going to be more expensive the next year. Batteries are a very small portion of what I'm talking about. The actual battery.
Yeah. The price will be driven by the utility cost.
Yeah.
It's not going to be driven by the cost of production.
Right. Yeah.
The price to the utility, or excuse me, the price to the installer might be based on cost of production.
Yeah. So their profit margins may get bigger, and they could actually make money one day. But it's and customers understand this. When you break it down like that, they're like, yeah, you're right. The more I wait, the higher it's going to be.
So let's talk more about NEM metering and how it affects solar customers. We touched on in the beginning that we used to have this awesome thing called net metering, and now that's changed to a buyback. How do recent changes in NEM policies impact the value proposition for solar by itself compared to doing solar plus battery? And guys, if you're in the industry, you may still be in a market that has a one-to-one buyback, or maybe even to have net metering, which is fantastic. But I'm telling you, it's going to change. It started in Arizona, then it went to Nevada, now it's in California.
And even if you did have a one-for-one buyback, you have to compare apples to apples, right? So when you're comparing, let's say we were in a place with one-to-one buyback, and I was trying to sell them solar. Comparing apples to apples, right? If he uses 10,000, I'm going to show him a system that produces 10,000. I'm going to compare apples to apples. However, if I'm showing him a system that makes him energy independent, that protects his family during outages, that does all of that, I'm not comparing apples to apples anymore. So I need to compare his cost of the utility, plus the cost of like an $18,000 generator, plus the cost of about $500 a year to run that generator. Those costs, plus my system with a battery, are cheaper. So it's still financially cheaper, even in a one-for-one NEM, to compare apples to apples. The problem is people compare solar with a battery to grid only. It's not fair. You're not comparing apples to apples. That'd be like comparing solar and a battery to somebody who's selling solar without a battery. You would never do that. So why are you comparing solar and a battery to the grid? That's really dumb for you. You need to compare it to the grid, plus the generator, plus maintenance on the generator, plus fuel on the generator, plus oil, plus... That's what you're comparing to, because that's your apples to apples. But the NEM policies, the more they change the NEM, so we've always kind of said, when I started solar, the NEM, I explain it as a free battery. The utility company's your battery. Why would you go buy a battery? You give it to them, they give you the credit, they are your free battery, and the power never goes out. Those days ended like years and years and years. There's people who have been in the industry a long time who have never heard of a one-for-one NEM. So that ended a long time ago. So with these NEM plans, they're no longer, it's just, you can't explain them as a free battery anymore. You can absolutely explain them as a battery. Not in the sense that it helps you when the power goes out, but in the sense that that's what you're doing with your power. However, now it's a battery that costs money. So going solar, now you always have the cost of a battery, no matter what. The battery's either going to be the grid, they're going to have a cost, they're going to do, and the way that they make their costs is by giving you a lower credit than what they charge you. The cost is the difference, right? And then the cost is demand fees. The cost is... And what are they giving you? They're giving you a place to store that energy, aka a battery. You are paying for a battery when you go solar only. You're just paying for it through the grid without getting the benefit of actually having a battery.
Well, you're still selling back that extra power rather than you storing it yourself.
Yeah,
right.
You're still selling
You're giving
it
back to the grid now at a loss though. So why not
You're
keep it?
paying for it. So if you're giving it to someone at a loss, you paid them.
Exactly.
So you're paying them to be your battery. Or you can just buy your own battery. So the same way you sell solar. Look, it's not like you're paying $0 for electricity. I'm just saying, instead of paying the utility, pay this. Now you can take it one step further and say, look, I'm sorry, you should have got solar, when I knocked your door 5 years ago and then won. but you don't have it now. The grid's no longer free battery. So we got to go solar and we got to pay for the battery. How are we going to do that? Are we going to do it with the grid, which will be probably cheaper in the first 5 years, but you're not going to have backup? Or we can do it with the battery, give you backup, maybe more expensive for the first 5 years, but every year after that it'll be cheaper and you've had backup the whole time. So that's how I explain unfair NEMs. I explain them as the grid's a battery and you got to pay for a battery, or a battery's a battery and you pay for a battery. So they have to make
either
the
your
choice.
battery or theirs, right?
Yeah, you don't.
And if you own it, you're getting the tax credit,
Yeah.
right? That's the
You're
other
getting
cool
the
thing. on it.
backup. You're getting.
There's a lot more benefit to it. So let's talk about kind of some practical considerations from an install and maintenance standpoint. If I'm a customer considering a battery, what do I need to think about when, from an installation side of it and maybe a maintenance side? What are some things that I need to be aware of?
So I always tell people, maintenance side, make sure your app's running and check your app. Do not count on your installer to say like, hey, your system's down. We need to come out and see what it is. If you see that something's down or see that something's wrong, just call your installer.
And what's really cool about those apps, you can see
It's going to have an alert.
it's like a gas tank though, right? It shows you how full your battery is. It shows you at what rate it's discharging. It shows when it's discharging. And Tesla, if you're doing the Powerwall 3, the tech on that's so cool because you can program it to charge and discharge when you want, how much you want it to discharge.
It's awesome. Their app is amazing. So the maintenance, just look at your app once a week at least and make sure you have no flags in there. They're going to flag something if something's not working properly. You just click the button to call your installer and say, hey, I have this weird thing. What's going on?
What does a typical battery installation look like? Very simply put, how much room do we need? How much equipment is there? What does it weigh? Give me kind of paint a picture. If I'm like, all right, I don't want to add one, but where does this even go?
So we're going to want to put it on the end. So most houses, the main panel is going to be like on the garage wall for most homes. So we're going to want it to be on the other side of that panel. That's the best spot for us. That's like us being selfish about it. But whatever the customer wants, they may have to pay for it if it's going to be run across the house.
You just got to remember that it's a 300-pound battery, and if it's going to be on the wall, you've got to have.
They're fine with it where it goes. There's power. They're like 7.5 inches deep. So the return wall is that wall where your garage goes down. So as long as it doesn't stick out further than that, you don't have to put in like posts or anything weird with your install to make the AHJ happy. So just right there, these power walls, they're like 23 inches wide, 43 inches tall. So typically you can, like a big house, to take like a nice big user basically off grid, like 4 of them, you need like 10 feet of wall space. So that would be like the biggest install, 10, 12 feet of wall space. And then just down from there.
For system integration, how do battery storage systems integrate with existing solar setups? I've got solar and now I'm hearing about batteries. I want to get one. Are there any compatibility issues that homeowners need to be aware of?
So for me, when I was learning about all this, I guess in my head, I always thought that solar's connected to the battery and like the power's traveling through the main panel and then traveling to charge the battery and then going to the grid. It doesn't really work like that. So it's basically compatible with all PVs. It could be PV, it could be a windmill, it could be a diesel generator, it could be anything producing power. So what we do is you put what's called a CT on whatever the thing.
This is where we're going to get technical, guys.
So if I'm talking to a customer, I'd say we put a little measuring thing on the wire. This lets us measure whatever is producing power. It doesn't matter what it is. It can be a windmill, but it's going to be your solar. So we measure whatever's producing power. This battery is also measuring what's going to the grid and what you're taking from the grid. So it knows these two numbers. So if it knows this number's 5, I'm producing 5, and it knows, well, this number's -2, Well, I know my panel must be using 3, right? So it's not that the power like flows anywhere. The battery knows I'm overproducing by 2 because this measurement is -2. So I'm going to turn this breaker on at 2 kilowatts. And I'm just going to consume 2 kilowatts of power. Now, if
Basically, I'm going to charge myself instead of having it go
so it's
back
not
to the
that
grid.
it flow. The battery controls. So the battery knows, whoa, you're overproducing by 2. I'm going to turn on at 2. A cloud just rolled over. Now you went down to just 1. Well, now I'm only going to consume 1 kilowatt. A bigger cloud went over and you're actually pushing 1 to the grid, or I'm sorry, you're whatever that is. Let's say the sun came back out and now you're or the other way. Sorry, you're pulling 1 from the grid because a bigger cloud came over. So that now that number is +1. It goes, oh crap, I need to discharge -1. So it can be any solar, any inverter. It can be a water wheel. It can be anything producing power, and it knows that measurement, and then it knows to discharge the difference to consume that power.
The batteries are very, very smart.
Yeah, it's 90% computer.
So when we talk about integrating that with an existing system, they're saying, okay, I've already got solar. I want to add a battery. Is that just a plug and play thing? Or, I mean, how difficult is that to do to hook it up to an existing system?
That's what Tesla has changed. It is with an existing system, there is typically more work. It's an update thing with Tesla, so it will be plug and play. Right now, you got to build a loads panel, but a little bit more work on existing solar for now. But again, Tesla is really changing and trying to make these battery installs as cheap as possible. Because before, it was like a $7,000 battery cost $7,000 to install. Mm-hmm. And they're just driving that down.
But if I have an existing solar system, I want to add a battery, it can be done. It just needs, it may be more than just a battery to make that happen.
Yeah, you had some other components. So it's what I talked about, how it measures there's going to be other components. Try not to get too technical, but yes, absolutely. You can roll by, add batteries to anybody. If I was a door knocker, I would probably only knock solar doors and try to sell people batteries.
Well, and I think it's a really cool market, right? I mean, we've got, I don't know, 50, 60, 70,000 solar customers in Arizona, and probably 95% of them or more don't have a battery. They've already got the solar technology, and it's like, hey, by adding a battery, you're going to complete your system.
Oh, yeah, it's so much easier.
It's such a cool pitch.
Yeah, and the response from you guys have been sending me to a lot of solar customers. Half of them are like, why didn't he tell me about this? Like, I would have, well, how'd you buy your solar? Well, cash. Well, what'd you pay? It was like 40 grand. And he didn't tell you about the battery? Like, he didn't. Would you have paid like another 30? Yes. Like, this is really cool.
Yeah.
And you guys are just missing out on all these. And one of your own employees who has solar, I was talking to him. I was like, hey, if your solar payment was like $100 more per month, but you didn't see those demand charges, you didn't see those demand fees, and you didn't see, and overall, you were paying $20 more a month than you are now with solar and paying all, would you be happier? He said, absolutely. I'd be way happier paying $20 a month more, 30. I'd be happier paying $50 a month more, because this just pisses me off how they did this to me. Not you guys, the utility company.
Sure.
He's producing all the power. And
he's just not getting credit for it anymore.
I've seen people's bills where it was sized beautifully for 1-to-1. Like they were, 1 month, I should have taken a picture because it was the craziest. It was like whatever it was, they produced 1,000 and they consumed 1,000. 1-for-1 them, $0 bill, right?
Yeah, right.
It's like $120 because they consumed all of it during like peak.
Yeah.
And it's just, And I'm like, so they were really mad at me. And I'm like, no, don't be mad at the solar company. Look at this. So I showed them the energy usage, and it's like, look at last year before solar. Look at this year. They cut it by 90%. Logic tells you your bill should have went down by 90%. Well, yeah, like, well, no, because they fight it, and your bill went down by 10%. Even though, like, so it's so they are much happier paying more. Because we're not talking like $1,000 a month here. We're talking like $20-$30 a month more than if you would have just sized it differently with batteries. If people can pay $50 a month, and people can absolutely, they do it today. People have the grid, they have an electric bill, and they go buy a generator. How much money did that generator save them on the electric bill?
Nothing.
Well, Jared, why do they buy it then? I can't sell anything if it doesn't save them money. How do people sell generators?
It's there for backup.
It doesn't save them a dime, but the people buy it. Generac's $1 billion company. They're selling these all over the place. So there's some areas you can drive, every fifth house has a generator.
Yeah.
It's not saving them any money. How did that guy sell it? He must be an amazing sales guy. No, people want these things. So when you're selling them this system, and it's like, hey, remember what happened in Texas with the freeze. Look at what's happening in California with their grid. It is just a nightmare. And it's getting worse here. We are outpacing the grid. You got EVs, you got AI and quantum computing, you got cryptocurrency. We were already outpacing the grid before these came out of nowhere. So with all of these things happening, what type of value, if you had to put a dollar amount on the value that you would spend, how much money would you spend to protect your family, to make sure that they're okay in that worst case situation, but also to have that feeling in your head that you're energy independent? Would you pay like $50 a month for that? I noticed you have an alarm. How much is your alarm? It's like $80 a month. Okay, well, an alarm's an insurance policy. You could pay $80 a month and never have a break-in. But when most people buy an alarm, the day after they have a break-in, and
Right.
then, so it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. So what is that protection worth to you? A lot of people will tell you like $100 a month. As long as you can come in with your solar and your battery at less than 100. So when I mostly sell cash, but when I sell like financing or a payment, if there's solar and battery, and if I've designed it to where it's pretty much a minimum, when I tell people like, you're not going to get a bill, I explain to them like, look, you may get $20, $30 above the minimum service fee. Like don't come talk to me about $1 like a day. Because weird things can happen. You can use the dryer more that month. I forgot what I was talking about.
Go back to saying, you're just saying people are willing to pay $100 a month.
Oh,
to be
so
able to have
most
that
people
security.
are, yeah. And if you're able, you're going to come in, build this system. Let's say they were paying $250. I promise you it's not going to be $350. So when I give them a monthly payment, it's not $350 because I did not change their monthly expenses by $350. I added $100 a month to their monthly expenses.
Because you have replaced what they're currently using.
So I'm only telling them the difference. And you just told me, and with solar you can't do that. You can, with solar only, what are you selling them besides cheaper power? So if the power is not cheaper, why are they buying solar? So when you're actually giving them something, you can say, what would you pay for this? If I was selling you a generator, let's pretend like the solar and batteries didn't exist. How much is a generator worth? What would you pay for a generator per month if you didn't have to pay anything down? $1 a day? What would you pay? And a lot of people, $50 a month. You're not going to be over. You're probably going to bill swap them. And they just said they'd pay $50 a month to have a generator. You're giving them a generator. That's all you sell. You sell diesel generators, gas generators, liquid propane generators, natural gas generators. You sell solar generators and battery generators. That's all we sell is generators. So if you're like, hey, what's a generator worth to you? And yeah, a lot of people say between $50 and $100.
Bingo. That's all you have to do. And the cool thing about this kind of generator, going back to what we were talking about, is that you can tell it when you want to discharge.
Yeah.
And so you have it discharge
Yeah.
during those obnoxious peak.
Yeah, it's way better
peak hours.
than a generator.
Yeah. It's
Lasts more hours too
Sure.
with these new LFP batteries. So
pretty incredible. All right. How might advancements in battery technology further enhance the benefits of solar energy systems in the next few years? What other advancements do you think need to come down the pipeline that will make it even better than what we're able to offer?
Like software, getting all their software good. You guys have times where you have 2 peak hours. So that battery, it's got to know, whoa, this peak time is going to end, but then I'm not going to have sun till the next peak time. So it's not as easy as they make it sound to like, oh, but it's going to know to only deplete this to keep that much charge. Like, so getting some of that software, like, why can't you just make the software be like, hey, discharge this amount, then save the rest. So getting their software to kind of work more like they sell the dream of how it works, but getting that easier to work in that way. But everything else, I see that's where they can make those improvements on getting that. They've already done so much with how it can discharge with the peak times. With it can even control EV chargers, so you're only charging your battery with solar, and only when your home battery is fully charged, instead of sending it to the grid, it'll send it to your car. So they already do. And with the span panel, I mean, it's really cool stuff.
It's pretty smart what it can do. So what advice would you give to a customer who's on the fence about adding a battery, either by itself or with a solar system?
So when they're on the fence, I go back to, let's pretend solar was never invented. Let's pretend batteries were never invented. But the grid was. And power outages were a real thing. And generators are a real thing that people sell. Do you see value in a generator? Would you ever in a million years buy a generator? Half the people tell me yes, half the people tell me no. If they tell me no, then my value in the battery, then it only comes back to savings, because they don't see value in the other thing that it does, which is the protection. And when they only see value in the savings, that's when it gets harder to really get them to want it. Now they're being more analytical. Is it going to save me money? Will I move before it saves me money? But if they see that value in the protection, then I definitely have them do the battery. Honestly, the people who don't, those are the half that I don't close. I don't want to talk anyone into it. So I just flat out ask them, do you see value in it? If anything that I talked about, having that protection, having that independence, being able to control your price, if all of that, if you're just like, no, I am not interested in any of this, man, then yeah, it was great to meet you. Like, call me if you are. But if as I've been talking, you're like, yeah, I'd love to have that. How much does this cost? Can I afford it? And then let's talk about your budget. Let's talk about what can you afford? Can you afford $30 a month? Okay, cool. I'll make sure it's not more than $30 than you're paying. And then if they can't afford it, then I don't want to sell someone something they can't afford. So I'm just getting them to want my product, and I will be the best person to help you get that product. I'm not here to be the best person to talk you into it. There's other people that are way better than that than I am. It's like if I sold swimming pools. I don't want to go over to somebody's house who doesn't want a swimming pool. I want to go over to somebody's house who wants to talk about a swimming pool, and I'm going to tell them I'm going to be the best person to design them the coolest pool, give them exactly what they want. I want to work with people who want to work with me. So after I explain all these benefits, if I can tell they are not interested, I kind of just end it. If I can tell they've been picking up asking, oh, that's cool, like show me, what's that one do? Then talking about, can you afford it? And then it's not something that they were pushed into. Like what's the saying? A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still.
Sure.
So you are not going to convince anyone to get this stuff. They have to want it. And it's super cool. So just talk about how cool it is. Half the people want it, half the people don't.
It's an education piece, right? As we've kind of discussed today, it's like The benefits of a battery are there when people understand the situation that they're currently in.
Yeah.
We sell the problem, the solution makes natural sense. The problem is right now you're in a situation where you have to buy power at a certain rate, at a certain time, or have a penalty if you buy it during that certain time. And that rate is only going to go up, and the stress on the grid is only going to get worse, which is going to continue to drive it up. So that's where you're currently at. We're going to give you a solution that allows you to provide your own power, give you energy independence if the grid goes down, and allow you to replace expensive power with cheaper power.
Right.
It's just a better way of doing things. And I think, like you said, if people kind of, if they're educated and they understand how that works, you ask that question, how much would you be willing to pay for a solution that makes it so you don't have to worry about this, this, and this?
Yeah.
Well, that tells you what your price point is already.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, how much can you pay? How much can you afford? Well, if you can kind of tell what they can afford, and yeah, it's all about that value that they see in it. And a lot of people see huge amounts of value in the batteries, and like you said, you're telling them what the problem is, and honestly, half the people don't think it's a problem. They have other problems that they're worried about. They're remodeling their house, their kids, and those are the half that don't close. Those are the ones that you just kind of, you don't want to work with those people. Then the other half will be interested in what you're talking about. And those are the ones, okay, let's start discussing what you want. I'm here to fix problems, and if we go solar only, we're going to open up a whole new box of problems. If we go battery only, it's going to save you the most money, but how are you protecting yourself against price increases? How are you protecting yourself against worst case scenario, big disasters, long outages, cyber attack on the grid? You need both of them. You really do.
And there's your whole home solution.
Yeah.
So guys, hopefully you got some stuff out of this. Stick around with part 2. We're going to be doing a role play, and Nate's going to show you how he sells it. I will be his customer, and you guys will be able to see what it looks like to actually present battery. We understand this is new for most of you, so you can kind of watch this and use this to formulate your own solar battery presentations. We appreciate you guys listening, and we'll see you for part 2 in just a few minutes.